You cannot believe what they cure. They cure high blood pressure, they cure high cholesterol, they cure diabetes, type 2 diabetes, they even cure cancer. And they write these things up in peer-reviewed medical journals. People should check this out.
I'm happy you're back to watch my show Growth Factor. I'm Amalia, and you are looking at Tibor and Elise. And the reason they're here today is to help you know that there's something you can do despite getting a dire diagnosis. And Elise had a diagnosis of cancer. So we're going to get right into it because she used some strategies that are a little bit different. And we'd love to share that with you. So first, I'd like to ask, what was your diagnosis and what is it all about?
The diagnosis was multiple myeloma, and that's a blood cancer, which is very different than solid cancers like breast cancer, for example. And the diagnosis also with solid cancers, there's stage 1, 2, 3, and 4, which people know stage 4 is like pretty bad. And multiple myeloma is very, very different. So there are staging, but it's different. Anyway, I was diagnosed and my doctor said I'm high risk. And I had no clue what that even meant. And then we started researching.
And then we found out it was ultra high risk, actually, which is the absolute worst possible thing that you can be told if you have multiple myeloma. That's like stage 4.
And I know a lot of people, we all have these weird symptoms from time to time, and we usually think, oh, it might be the C word. I don't want to say that word. So could you tell us what were your first inkling that you had something going on with your body, and then why did you go to the doctors?
All right. I went in for pre-op X-ray for an elective procedure. And when the X-ray technician read the X-ray, she comes out and she gives me the disc, which I was expecting. And then she gives me a report and she sits down next to me, taps me on my leg and says, go see your doctor.
That's not good.
So I said, really? She said, no. Today, go see your doctor today. I said, why? She said, go see your doctor. So I was kind of freaking out at that point. And usually Tibor comes with me to all of my tests of any kind, even to the dentist. And for, I don't remember, one reason he didn't come with me that day. And so I had to digest all that information on my own. So to make a long story short, I immediately called the doctor and I got an appointment the next day. He ran a whole bunch of tests. And within a week, we knew it was multiple myeloma. And I still had no clue what that really meant.
We'd never heard that word, those words, multiple myeloma. By the way, what the X-ray technician saw was lesions in the bones, meaning the bones had holes in them. Something was eating away at her bones. Yeah, so we went to the doctor and the doctor sent us to a CT scan. We got a CT scan done.
A full body X-ray.
A full body X-ray.
And, you might say, well, did you know something was wrong? And I had a slight ache in my back. And I thought maybe I pulled a muscle, I exercised too much. I mean, it wasn't anything serious, but it was the bones in my ribs that was causing ache.
That the bone marrow that had escaped the bone was eating away and destroying her rib. And so it was starting to hurt. Initially, it was kind of on and off, and then it was constant. And all this was going on simultaneously with the result of the X-ray, and we being told that she had multiple myeloma. So I mean, so then when we found out that she has multiple myeloma and it's cancer, we didn't know how bad it was. All we knew is that she has multiple myeloma. We understood that cancer spreads very rapidly, so we understood that time is of the essence. But at the same time, we just wanted to make sure that she has a good doctor and a good hospital. So we went hospital shopping. We really went hospital shopping.
Well, first you have to understand, I'm from the United States, but we live in Israel. So it's nationalized medicine. And in the nationalized medicine, there's certain hospitals or doctors you're supposed to use. But that didn't deter us. We decided we wanted to find the best one.
Even if we had to pay for it. So we went to 3 hospitals. We spoke to the top people at those 3 hospitals. One of them that, you know, the country would pay for, and the other 2 would not. They would not pay for. And and then I was doing incredible amount of research. I mean, I was reading. I knew nothing about medicine until that point. I am very inclined to math, science, economics. When it comes to medicine, 0. Actually, no, that's -0. And I mean, if you would tell me aspirin, you know, maybe I would recognize the word, but I certainly wouldn't recognize the pill. I generally didn't take absolutely anything, although I did have cancer. So when I had cancer, obviously, I took the hospital treatment.
But
Anyway.
so anyway, he did a lot of research. And of course, we called all the doctors we knew. We knew a few oncologists, and they kind of we sent them the tests.
Well,
they didn't want to tell me what the real problem was, because they thought I should get it from my doctor, and they didn't want to be the bearer of bad news.
Well, I should say that in my reading, I discovered that it's very important to be treated in a hospital where they have a lot of expertise with myeloma. You know, if you are in a region where, you know, you have like a regional hospital and they really don't know myeloma, chances are that your life expectancy will be significantly reduced. So after having read that, you know, I was researching for doctors in Israel who had written many papers on multiple myeloma, and, you know, which hospitals do they belong to. Anyway, so finally we ended up at Sheba. So what I liked about Sheba was that I think it was Newsweek that commissioned a study to find the 10 best hospitals in the world, and Sheba was on that list of 10. So that was one thing. They had a huge hematology department, so I liked that. And what I really went nuts over is that they actually had a separate myeloma unit within hematology. And the doctors in that myeloma unit did nothing but myeloma. So anyway, I found the telephone number of the doctor who was the head of hematology. His name is Dr. Nagler. Very, very, very elegant, intelligent, beautiful person.
He speaks a lot in all these conferences.
He speaks all over the world. You can imagine, to be the head of hematology at Sheba, you have to be quite knowledgeable. And so I found his phone number and I cold called him, and he answered the phone, and we set up an appointment and we went there. And I said, you know, like, why should I come to your hospital with my wife's myeloma? What can you do for us? Like, literally, like, you know, I thought he'll chuck me out, you know, like, we don't need you. We have plenty of sick people in this country, you know. But surprisingly, he really liked my attitude a lot. And then he answered all my questions, and he explained to me why he thought that we should come to Sheba and why we should be treated by them.
And he also educated us a little bit about the disease.
And after some discussion, and that was the 3rd hospital we went to, and I got very, very turned on by that whole scene. You know, the fact that they had a myeloma unit, and that, you know, they had a huge hematology department. And he said, look, why don't you guys take a couple of days? You know, like with cancer, you want to take a couple of days. Yeah, sure. Why don't you take a couple of days, think about it, and let me know what your answer is. So no, we don't need a couple of days. Give us the room. So we went out, and she and I spoke. Elise and I spoke, and I said, this is our hospital. This is where we have to go. And so we went back and we told Dr. Nagler that we want to come to his hospital, but I have certain conditions, right? I want to be treated by the top doctor in a myeloma unit. the one who heads up the department. I want to speak to her right now. I want her to call in. I want to speak to her right now. And
So
I want the treatment to start today. It was 5 o'clock.
first
in
of all,
the evening.
this was like 4 o'clock on Thursday. And in Israel, 4 o'clock on Thursday is like a 4 o'clock on Friday. It's like tomorrow's their day off. You know, it's the end of the work week. And he said, okay, 1 minute. And he
Well,
called, he called the doctor to see if
the
she
head
was
of
still in,
myeloma, the
it's a
myeloma
woman,
unit. Yeah.
to see if she was still in the hospital, and she was. And she came over to his office, and
We spoke.
And then, so he says, okay. So she said, follow me. So
Immediately, she got on the phone and
What-
started arranging her treatment.
So, but what happened was, we're following her from his office to her office, and it was not a short walk. All right. The whole time we're walking from his office to her office, she's on the phone. And our thought was, either she's a really busy doctor or she's totally ignoring me until I sit in her office. You know, we were a little put off. But of course, everything she was doing was in Hebrew, so we didn't know what she was saying to who. But what she was doing is she was making arrangements
For us.
for me, for testing, and to get me in the system, and what had to do to make sure I was covered by national health care, and how I can
Which
start
we were
the
not.
testing.
We were not.
But we ended up being covered, but she was working on it, and just like 1, 2, 3, getting everything going. And that was pretty amazing. And she made arrangements. So the following work day, which was Sunday is like Monday in Israel, is I showed up. Actually, the next day I showed up for a test, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was all a blur. It was all the whole first
said
week
to her,
or two was
I
a
don't,
real blur.
I don't care if we're covered or not. You know, I'm paying for it. Just get the treatment going. You have to understand, you're talking about treatments that can cost easily $40,000, $50,000 a month. Okay, so you know, the first treatment actually had to be put on the credit card, because until she actually eventually she arranged that we were covered, but we were going to proceed anyway, regardless.
So that's the answer to your question. How was I diagnosed?
The only part that I don't
And
understand,
but go ahead.
the only part I didn't understand was why you were taking those tests. You said you had a little bit of pain in your back, maybe your ribs. So what tests were you doing? Why were you doing those
What
tests?
happened was, when the X-ray technician,
And why did you take the X-ray?
no, I told her it was a pre-op test for something unrelated.
Yeah, it was for a bunion, nothing to do with myeloma.
Okay.
And they saw holes in the bones. So we went to my family doctor, and he saw the report. So he sent me for a CT scan to get a better understanding of what's there. So we got the CT scan within a day or two.
Right, but to answer your question, the reason why we took the X-ray originally that discovered the problem was completely unrelated to myeloma. It was for an elective procedure, nothing to do with multiple myeloma, and that's what discovered it. We would have discovered it anyway. Right, we would have discovered it anyway because she already started having pain in her ribs, you know, which we thought she just pulled a muscle, but you know, as the days went by, the pain became worse and worse.
And we're going to get into, there's some foods, there's some things that you did to save your own life. But before that, I want to know that, can you tell us a little bit about the tests that were performed to confirm the diagnosis of multiple myeloma, and what specific results the various tests showed?
All right. The first test that the myeloma, actually my GP ordered certain tests also, but the myeloma doctor that I went to redid all the tests. So the standard tests are basic blood tests, and they look for certain proteins and other things. It's very technical. I really don't know what it is, but it's a blood test, a PET scan, and then a bone marrow biopsy.
So I want to tell you about that. Okay. So they were looking at a protein marker in the blood that represents the cancer. It's called IgA. And the IgA, normal people have a certain level of IgA, and that level would be somewhere in the 300s. And hers was more than 10 times as much, which means that the IgA, because there's IgA, IgG, IgM, and there should be a balance in the bone marrow. And the IgA was totally conquering everything else. You know, that was the cancer. And so that's what the blood test showed. It showed that her IgA the cancer had gone totally berserk, 10 times the level that a normal person would have.
There's another test that they do, not necessarily to diagnose the myeloma, but to see the part of the progression of it, is a bunch of complicated urine type samples. And what they're looking at is when you have myeloma is eating your bones, the plasma cells are eating your bones. And a lot of times what happens is that excess calcium escapes and it goes through your digestive system and it gets kind of stuck in the kidneys. So a lot of people with myeloma have kidney failure. So they did tests to determine whether or not I had kidney failure, which I didn't.
So you understand that the myeloma destroyed the bones. The bone is calcium, and the calcium gets processed in the kidney. But it clogs up the kidney because it's just too much bone destruction going on. Normally in a myeloma patient, it hadn't happened to her yet. So the kidneys were fine. So anyway, so that was the blood. Okay. Then we get to the
PET scan, which was
wait. So let's go to the bone marrow.
Bone marrow. The bone marrow was the next step.
Biopsy, right? So they do several tests there. One of them is they can actually count the level of the cancer, which is monoclonal plasma cells. That's the cancer. And they found that 70 to 80% of her bone marrow was cancer. Not cancerous, cancer. 70 to 80% at diagnosis, 70 to 80% of her bone marrow was cancer, 70 to 80%. And they also do a FISH test. And that's very technical. FISH,
Well,
F-I-S-H.
That's an abbreviation. It's abbreviation. It's what when they take the bone marrow out, it's a chemical test that they do on the sample to look for certain characteristics.
They look for certain genetic problems, and they look at, specifically, they look at 5. And if you have any one of them, you're high risk. If you have more than 2, you're ultra high risk. She had 3. Ultra high risk relates to the life expectancy, you know.
And the prognosis.
I'm reading, and I'm reading that, you know, if you're a high risk a multiple myeloma patient, your life expectancy is like 24 months, you know. And I'm absolutely freaking. And she's not high risk; she's ultra high risk. So that's what the bone marrow biopsy showed, that 70 to 80% monoclonal plasma cells, and the FISH test, which is also on the bone marrow, showed that she was ultra high risk.
And the fact that the plasma had escaped the bone marrow and was eating the bones, that's another factor in and of itself that makes you high risk. And
the last test that was done was a PET scan. A PET scan. So the PET scan showed that her cancer had spread all over her body. It had gone to her skull, sternum, ribs front and back, arms and legs. And the doctors, after seeing the result of the PET scan, were talking amongst themselves, and our doctor mentioned that to us, of putting metal rods into her arms and legs to prevent them from disintegrating.
A lot of people with multiple myeloma also have major bone disintegration in their spine. They shrink, they can't walk, they're in serious pain. So I almost feel like mine was discovered relatively early, even though it really wasn't early. And that we hopped on things quickly once we discovered there's a possible problem, and between what the doctors wanted me to do and what Tibor researched, and we started to do, I mean, the day after I was officially diagnosed in the hospital, I started a water-only fast. Now, that wasn't easy. And Tibor decided to fast with me. Well, he'll explain why, but he's decided to fast with me to, you know, it'd be very difficult if I'm not eating and he's eating, if I smell food cooking, you know, and or he says, oh, come on, you can do it, you can do it. And
what do you mean smell food cooking? You got to be cooking for me.
yeah, I'm the one cooking, right?
While she's fasting.
So how can he say it's just another day or two or whatever, and he's not even fasting, you know? So how can he tell me what to do if he's not experiencing the same hunger or anxiety or whatever? Okay?
I didn't think that I wanted to fast. I wanted her to fast for a long time. I wanted her to fast for 30, 40 days. And I didn't feel that I would have the moral authority to tell her to keep fasting when she says she's hungry if I'm not doing it with her. If I'm also fasting, I can say, hey, I'm fasting too, and you're the sick one. So you continue to fast.
Beautiful.
He kept saying 30 days, and I'm going, what? That, you know, maybe a week, you know, maybe a couple of days. But why don't you tell him why we decided to fast?
And what year was this when you got your diagnosis?
2020, July 2020, in the height of COVID.
2 years ago.
Right.
So I had colon cancer in 2012, so that's 10 years ago. And I read up on the internet about that. And I found that many people who were going through the same thing that I was going through, that is chemo, they recommended fasting during chemo, that it made the experience a lot easier, better. And in fact, when I had my first treatment of chemo, I had a very, very bad reaction to it. And then I started fasting. So what I would typically do is before the chemo, 2 days before the chemo, I would start fasting. So I started fasting during the chemo, through the chemo. That is, I started 2 days before the chemo treatment, and I continued to fast until after the chemo was out of my body. And that made the experience a lot easier to bear. And in fact, I did all my treatments. There were, you know, it was a 6-month period. Every 2 weeks, I had to go in and get this chemo treatment. And it was never delayed because whatever, anyway, I did it like really, it was.
When he fasted, he didn't have nausea. He was weak, possibly from not eating and also from the chemo, but he didn't have the nausea and the diarrhea and all that nasty stuff.
Right.
So
I did have it the first time with the first treatment before I started fasting, but then I didn't have it. So it was a much better experience. And anyway, so I'm cancer free now. Colon cancer generally doesn't come back after 5 years. If you are in remission for 5 years, and I'm in remission for 10 years. So, you know, but I got interested in fasting. And I started researching fasting, and I found incredible things about fasting. And, you know, I try to tell people how powerful fasting is and how much healing goes on when you're fasting. And I can't convince absolutely anybody. I mean, most people think that if you fast for 3 days, you die. Actually, you can fast for 70 days and you don't die. If you have enough fat on you. They think, what, you're going to be starving, you're going to be starving. So there is a big difference between fasting and starving. Fasting means that you're not eating, but your body is very well fed. I'd like to explain that.
Please.
When you don't eat, your body uses up your glycogen store, which is your glucose, and then it starts taking from your fat. It turns your fat into ketone bodies, and ketone bodies fuel your cells. So incredibly, our bodies, unlike most animals, are hybrid machines, like a car that can run on gasoline and on electricity. We can run on glucose or ketone bodies. And actually, the body loves ketone bodies, but you can only get to the ketone bodies if you stop filling your glycogen storage with, all the garbage that we eat every day. Because it's easier for the body to take that first. So the cells, all your cells in your body, very interesting the way it works. Did you know that your life expectancy, Amalia, you might not know this, your life expectancy is about 3 minutes. Did you know that? Unless you take another breath of fresh air, of oxygen, then you get another 3 minutes of life. Okay? And the cells, just like we need energy, we need oxygen constantly. We constantly need oxygen. Your cells also need energy constantly. They constantly need to be energized. If not, you're going to die. So the body, the cells can be energized with glucose or with ketone bodies. And when you don't get glucose, or if you don't eat especially, your body will start searching for the least desirable fat in your body. And that could actually be fat that's very damaging to your body. When you fast, you're actually detoxing. And so it starts burning all that to fuel your cells. And typically, if you're fasting, you will lose 1 pound a day. 1 pound of fat a day.
I like
1
that.
pound of fat, you can check it, comes to approximately 3,000 calories. So actually, when you're fasting, you're getting 3,000 calories. You're being exceptionally well fed. You might want ice cream or you might want hot dog, okay? But you're actually not hungry. You might be missing certain minerals, when you don't eat. But in terms of hunger, I can tell you when I fast, and I fast 3-4 times a year. I do that because I think it's very healthy.
How many
like
days?
How many days?
5, 6, 7 days, something like that, but like on the 4th day, it takes about 2-3 days until your glycogen store is completely empty. And so you're going into ketosis. If you've never done it before, your body has difficulty burning ketone bodies, your fat. It has to kind of learn how to do that. And then once it learns how to do that, also, when you're used to eating, if you're used to eating dinner at 6 o'clock, your bell will go off. There's a bell in your body that goes ding, 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 you're hungry, right? But after 3 days, if you haven't had a meal for 3 days, your bell doesn't go off anymore. You don't have hunger. You're not hungry. And when you're burning your ketone bodies after 3-4 days, when your body kind of has figured out how to burn the ketone bodies and you're getting 3,000 calories, you become very energetic. Like I remember I was walking with my friend at the Namal here in Tel Aviv, at the Tel Aviv port, and I felt like running. Henry, let's walk a little faster, like full of energy, and your mind clears up. If you've ever had brain fog, your mind clears up. Your vision actually becomes better. And if you have spots in your eyes, they clear up. The spots go away. I mean, it is incredible what happens when you fast. So you're being very well fed. Now, once let's say you fast for a very long time. Look, for argument's sake, let's say that you fast for 70 days, 80 days, right? And everything that you have to give in terms of fat, you've given, and there's nothing left. Okay, the only thing now you've got is have left is your vital organs, your heart, your kidneys. Your body will attack your heart and your kidneys, and you will die. At that point, you're starving. But only at that point are you starving. Until then, all you're doing is fasting, and you're being exceptionally well fed. But if you eat anything, if you eat half an apple, then your body will go to the glycogen store for that apple and will start burning your ketones, and you'll get very hungry. So it's very important, not that you eat a little, but that you eat nothing. And the only thing that you should eat is, drink water. Nothing but no coffee, no tea, no compromises, just fast. And it's important to drink. Very, very important to drink.
Well, also we took some minerals.
So
remember Debbie sent us some
during those 16 days.
Some minerals?
We didn't.
Not during that?
People should do it under doctor's care. to make sure that their bodies have what it needs. We didn't, and we were lambasted for it, but we succeeded anyway because she got cured. We'll get to that in a
I
minute.
felt I was going to the hospital, and twice a week, I was going to the hospital twice a week at that point for treatment, and they were taking my blood twice a week. So if anything was out of kilter,
They would know.
Minerals,
Yeah,
protein,
I guess so.
calcium,
In a sense,
whatever, they were monitoring me. He wasn't being monitored, and I didn't have that burst of energy that Tibor had. A woman's body is different than a man's body. A woman has to store a lot more because of the baby making machine, even though I'm past that age. So it affects women differently. But I felt I was being monitored, and I was weak. I was tired, and I was concerned about his health, because I said, you're the one who's taking care of me.
And what if you crash?
And what if you have a problem? We actually consulted, there's an organization in California, where you're from, that medically supervises people fasting. It's called True North. So we called them up and we had a consultation with one of their physicians. And they gave us a lot of pointers of what to do and what not to do. And they specifically said that Tibor should stop fasting. Not
because I'm the caretaker.
because he's the caretaker.
Okay.
And I'm not being medically supervised.
Right.
So I stopped after 15 days. She stopped after 16 and a half days, which kind of proves my point that I had to fast for her to fast. Because as soon as I stopped, she stopped too. But anyway, but 16 was okay. So I was telling you that I did a lot of research on fasting. So I was very fascinated by fasting. And so I found out all these things that I was telling you, glycogen storage, and then you deplete that, and then your body goes, it's a hybrid machine, so it goes to the fat and turns into ketone bodies, and your ketone bodies energize your cells, and you're getting a pound of fat a day.
How does fasting affect cancer?
So so I'm getting to that, right? I'm doing my research, so I'm reading all that. And then they talk about autophagy. So autophagy is a very, very, very big deal in medicine. In fact, in 2016, a Japanese doctor received a Nobel Prize for describing how autophagy works. Autophagy is two Greek words, and it means self-eating, which you would think is very damaging. But actually what happens when you, and the best way to get into autophagy is through fasting. And actually what happens is you completely renew your immune system. I mean, you get a brand new immune system when you fast within a few weeks. People don't understand how powerful fasting is as a healer. And you got to remember that during our evolution, I don't know what you think, how long we've been around, 6,000 years or hundreds of thousands of years. But I can tell you that, when we were hunters and gatherers, especially in the winter, there was really nothing to eat but the game that you caught. And you didn't catch game every day. And certainly you didn't have 3 meals a day. And if you didn't catch a meal, basically you fasted. So your body is basically in two modes generally. It's either in growth mode or in healing mode. When you're eating, you're in growth mode. When you're in growth mode, you cannot be in healing mode. When you're fasting, you're not in growth mode, you're in healing mode. So if you want to heal, you got to be fasting. I discovered True North, this organization, that they have 15 medical doctors, licensed medical doctors on staff, and all they do is fast people. They do nothing else but fast people. They have fasted about 25,000 people over a period of 33 years. They have an incredible amount of data on fasting. You cannot believe what they cure. They cure high blood pressure, they cure high cholesterol, they cure diabetes, type 2 diabetes, they even cure cancer. And they write these things up in peer-reviewed medical journals. People should check this out. The medical community knows nothing about fasting. Actually, I think it was the government took a case out against them many years ago, that they were quacks and they were frauds, that they claimed that they were healing people, but they had so much data that they just, they were convinced. And they actually did a study on high blood pressure is incurable, right? It's incurable. I mean, they have a pill for it. They can manage it, but you have to take that pill forever because you're never cured. And if you keep taking the pill, then you'll be okay, and stay away from salt and stay away from this and that. And then eventually you go blind and they'll cut off your legs. Okay. These people, True North, they did a study on hypertensive people with high blood pressure. I think it's written up in a peer-reviewed medical journal. They did, I think, 177 consecutive patients, as they came in the door. If they had hypertension, if they had high blood pressure, they were in the study. They were all on medication when they came in. And of course, you have to take away their medication as they begin to fast, because the fast is beginning to heal them. So they know how to do that very well. And they took away all the, how do you call it, and they were successful in every single one of them to significantly bring down the hypertension and take away the pills. And they didn't need pills thereafter. And they did a 1-year follow-up, and they did a 3-year follow-up. And they wrote up the results of that in that same peer-reviewed medical journal. And so that's what fasting does. They have one case where they had a solid tumor, a person who didn't want to take the medical treatment in a hospital. She didn't want chemo. She told her doctor she wants to do fasting, and the doctor said that's quackery. And then anyway, she went to True North anyway, and she fasted, I think, for 40 days. They won't fast anybody more than 40 days. They don't want anybody. People should check this out. The medical community knows nothing about fasting. Actually, I think it was the government took a case out against them many years ago, that they were quacks and they were frauds, that they claimed that they were healing people, but they had so much data that they just, they were convinced. And they actually did a study on high blood pressure is, incurable, right? It's incurable. I mean, they have a pill for it. They can manage it, but you have to take that pill forever because you're never cured. And if you keep taking the pill, then you'll be okay, and stay away from salt and stay away from this and that. And then eventually you go blind and they'll cut off your legs. Okay. These people, True North, they did a study on hypertensive people with high blood pressure. I think it's written up in a peer-reviewed medical journal. They did, I think, 177 consecutive patients, as they came in the door. If they had hypertension, if they had high blood pressure, they were in the study. They were all on medication when they came in. And of course, you have to take away their medication as they begin to fast, because the fast is beginning to heal them. So they know how to do that very well. And they took away all the, how do you call it, and they were successful in every single one of them to significantly bring down the hypertension and take away the pills. And they didn't need pills thereafter. And they did a 1-year follow-up, and they did a 3-year follow-up. And they wrote up the results of that in that same peer-reviewed medical journal. And so that's what fasting does. They have one case where they had a solid tumor, a person who didn't want to take the medical treatment in a hospital. She didn't want chemo. She told her doctor she wants to do fasting, and the doctor said that's quackery. And then anyway, she went to True North anyway, and she fasted, I think, for 40 days. They won't fast anybody more than 40 days. They don't want anybody dying on them. By the way, they never had a bad result. Like, it never happened that somebody died or somebody was injured in 25,000 patients.
So anyway, Tibor was inspired by that True North, as well as some other things that he had found, and said, what do you have to lose? Try fasting.
Oh, wait.
And he thinks, and he was saying that when you fast, you're not getting glucose to the cancer cells.
You're starving the cancer sugar.
Of their fuel. All right. So
you know that sugar loves that cancer loves sugar, right? Okay.
So I wasn't eating, and I told
I
my
want to talk
doctor
about my research
in
before
minute.
sorry.
I told my doctor I wasn't eating. And of course she was saying, what do you mean you're not eating? You have to keep up your strength.
3 meals
And
a day.
she sent me to their dietitian, and we're sitting there dutifully listening to the dietitian.
got to have
And then
carbs
and then we walked
protein.
out and we continued doing whatever we were doing. And as a matter of fact, when I was having treatment, they said you have to eat before you have such and such treatment. And they said, did you eat this morning?
We lied.
And I fibbed and I said, yeah, I'm fine. I said, I'm fine. You know, the hardest part was not having coffee. Not that I have a cup of coffee every morning, but not a lot, but just one cup. That was hard. But I did it. And I felt like, you know, you're kind of freaked out when you're told you have cancer. You're told you're high risk.
Ultra high risk.
It's in the middle of COVID. I'm in Israel. I can't travel. My kids can't come here and visit me. I'm never going to see my family again. You know, you don't know what the future is going to hold. It's not, if you're not going to eat, how can it hurt you? You know, I'll do it. So I did what the doctors wanted me to do. And I added the fasting. And I think it really helped. It kickstarted the process.
So just to give you a little bit more research, because I really want your viewers to understand how powerful fasting is. There is a doctor called Dr. Longo. Walter Longo. He wants to figure out how to make people live longer. And one of the things he did was he does tests on mice. So he injected cancer in a group of mice. This is actually on video. It's like unbelievable. He injected, not the injection part, but he injected cancer, and then he gave them heavy chemo treatment. And he separated them into two groups. One he fed regularly, and the other one he fasted. And then you see a video of the mice, both groups. The ones who are eating regularly are very sluggish, and soon they die. And the ones that are fasting are very energetic, and they all survive. All the ones who are fed regularly, all die, and all of the ones who are fasting survive. This is incredible. We're not talking about a 10% improvement or a 3% improvement, and maybe it was the chemo, maybe it was the fasting, maybe it was something else. 100% of the mice that ate regularly died, and 100% that fasted survived. So that to me was very, I'm not a mouse, but anyway, you know. But believe it or not, genetically, mice are very similar to humans. And of course, their metabolism is a lot faster. So when they fast, you know, 2 hours, it's like we're fasting 2 days. So you have to take that into consideration. But anyway, so I found that fasting was very, 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 very powerful. So that's why immediately when she had the diagnosis, I said to her, we got to start fasting immediately. And we started fasting, and she fasted for 16 and a half days. So that was from July the 31st, I think, of 2020 until August the 15th or so, something like that. So that was the fasting.
As a matter of fact, during that period, I had my first PET scan as part of the diagnostic tests. And one of the things you're supposed to do when you have a PET scan is not eat for 4 hours prior to. And what they do is they give you liquid that has radioactive
sugar
stuff in it.
Sugar.
And you're supposed to drink it. And then they do the scan of your body. And the theory is wherever the sugar goes, the radioactive sugar goes, it'll go to the cancer and it'll light up like a Christmas tree on the image. So before they do the test, they checked my glucose level because I guess they wanted to make sure I'm okay. I don't know why they do it.
This was around the 10th day of her fast.
And an average glucose level is maybe around 100.
Well, 70 to 100 is normal.
70 to 100.
If you're above 100, you're hyperglycemic. If you're over 125, you're diabetic. And if you're under 70, you're hypoglycemic. And
I think because I had been fasting for a week and a half, I believe my glucose
57.
level was 57.
I remember the number exactly. She started off when she was diagnosed, her glucose level was something like 98 or 99. and 10 days later was 57. I mean, that is very, very, very low.
And so the technician said to me, are you okay? Do you feel okay? She thought I was gonna fall down or something. I don't know. I says, no, I'm fine.
But I want to emphasize the fact that cancer loves sugar, and the PET scan is proof of that, because what they inject in you is sugar. It's radioactive sugar, so that they can follow where the sugar goes, and the sugar goes to the cancer. The other cells can also handle a little bit of sugar, but just a little bit, and then they close up, and they don't consume it. They consume just a tiny little bit of it, but the cancer can never close up. That's the nature of cancer. It's constantly on, constantly eating, constantly growing, constantly. So the sugar in the PET scan machine follows where the sugar goes, and that's where the cancer is, because cancer loves sugar.
So shortly after the PET scan, and around the time I stopped fasting.
Well, before you stopped fasting, I just want to tell another story.
What?
That one of the people that I was researching was a fellow by the name of Dr. Thomas Seyfried.
That's what I was about to say. So
that was before you were still fasting when I called him. I was very interested in what he had to offer, because I read him and I saw some of his videos, and he showed that you can not cure cancer, but maybe reduce the cancer with ketogenic diet and with hyperbaric oxygen treatment. So he shows an X-ray of a mouse that has cancer, and you see the size of the cancer. You know, it's a big piece of cancer. And then they put the mouse on ketogenic diet, and the cancer shrinks a little bit. And then they take another mouse, they show his cancer, and this is a big piece of cancer, and they put him in a hyperbaric oxygen chamber. You know what that hyperbaric oxygen chamber is? Will your viewers know what that is?
You can explain what it does. There's a lot of benefits. People are using it for injured by COVID, injured by the new vaccines. I know a lot of people talking about hyperbaric chambers for burn patients, but anything else you want to explain, let us know.
Yeah, so you get into a chamber. Sometimes it's a big chamber, 20 people get in at one time. They pressurize it to 2.5 times the pressure that your atmospheric pressure. And what you get is pure oxygen. And you sit there for several hours.
Some chambers are individual chambers, and some
4 or 5
places
times,
have
yeah,
large chambers for lots of people.
Israel
have
has
a party.
a big industry with respect to hyperbaric oxygen treatment. So they showed, so he shows, Dr. Thomas Seyfried shows in the video that they take a mouse, it has cancer, they put him into hyperbaric oxygen treatment, and it shrinks. And then they show a third mouse. They start off with cancer. It has an X-ray of the cancer. It's a big cancer. And with that mouse, they do both. They do ketogenic diet and hyperbaric oxygen treatment. And the cancer shrinks down to a tiny little bit of cancer, but the cancer is still there. So, okay, but that's solid cancer, and she had liquid cancer. She had blood cancer. Anyway.
So you called him up.
So I look up his telephone number, Amalia. This is really incredible. I cold call the guy. I mean, he doesn't know me. I don't know him. He doesn't know me from a hole in the ground, right? And wouldn't you know it, God works miracles. He answers the phone. And he spends 20 minutes with me on the phone. He doesn't know who I am. He's a busy guy. He spends 20 minutes on the phone with me. And I'm telling him my wife has multiple myeloma, and we were fasting, and we'd just gone to get a PET scan, and they measured her glucose level. It was 99 at diagnosis, and she's down to 57. And he gets all excited. 57? You're killing cancer! You're killing cancer! It's like I didn't see him because it was a telephone, but I think he was jumping up and down with excitement. You're killing cancer. So he tells me a lot of stuff in just a few minutes. And I'm writing like crazy, okay? So he wants me to get a glucose machine and measure her glucose and measure her ketone level. And he's got a GKI index, which is glucose ketone index, and he explains the index to me, and he tells me, what is the gold standard? You got to, get to, like a 1, So, so I write all this down, and I tell him I'm going to send him an email, and he responds to me, and he says he knows someone that he hasn't spoken to in a few years. He's an older guy who also had multiple myeloma. The guy's a doctor. I don't even know, he says, I don't even know if the guy's still alive, but I'll give you his email address. Why don't you communicate with him? He's like a really intelligent guy. He's a medical doctor. Maybe he has something to offer you. So I emailed the guy, a fellow by the name of Dr. Herrin, Herrin. Nothing, I think he also has some kind of a blog somewhere. But anyway, so he responds to me, and he says to me that he did high dose vitamin C treatment via IV. And when he started doing 3 times a week, and when he started doing that, he had dramatic results. So of course, I start researching vitamin C, right? So,
by the way, sorry to interrupt. Can you see on the screen National Cancer Institute intravenous high dose?
Yes. So, so I start researching it, and I find out that a fellow by the name of Linus Pauling, have you ever heard of Linus Pauling? Linus Pauling believed in vitamin C for cancer, and he was experimenting with it for 12 years. So I want to tell you viewers, who's Linus Pauling. Linus Pauling is only the 2nd person in the history of the world who's received a Nobel Prize in 2 different fields. The first one was Marie Curie, and Linus Pauling was the 2nd one. So he was probably one of the smartest people on earth, and he so believed in vitamin C treatment, high dose vitamin C via IV, that he spent 12 years experimenting with it. Of course, the hospitals wouldn't let him experiment on their patients until they wrote them off, until they said to the patient, you kind of, start digging your grave because you're dead. In 3 months, you'll be lying in your grave. So go home. There's nothing else we can do for you. Okay, Dr. Pauling, you can come and you can do your stuff, So that's very unfair to the patients, really very, very unfair to the patients. And he kept them. So he compared his results to the results of patients who did not receive vitamin C treatment, who were kind of in the same condition. And what he did incredibly, because he was working in a hospital with a doctor, he's not a medical doctor, he's a doctor, but not a medical doctor. So he was working with a medical doctor. And what he did was he compared his patients to other patients, but only if they had the same illness, treated by the same doctor, with the same protocol. And he made that comparison, and he found that his patients lived about 4 times as long without chemo. Vitamin C is actually a pleasant experience. It's not like chemo where you go home and you vomit the whole day. So he kept them alive 16 months. Typically they would die in 3 or 4 months. He kept them alive maybe 3 or 4 times longer, and with quality of life. So I said to myself, if that's good enough for Linus Pauling, it's good enough for me. And now it was time to find a doctor who would give her vitamin C treatment. Firstly, I went to the hospital and I said to the doctor in the hospital, can you please give her high dose vitamin C treatment? We were there anyway. So I figured, hospital, safe environment, they know how to do this stuff, And she said, no, don't do that. Like whatever we wanted to, don't do that. Don't do that. Why? She said, you're fighting what I'm doing. Vitamin C is an antioxidant, and I'm trying to oxidate her with my Velcade, with the medication I'm giving her. By the way, I want you to know that her doctor is incredible. I have nothing but the highest regard for her. And we more or less did everything that she recommended. I want to make that very clear. We did what the doctor wanted us to do. And this woman is absolutely amazing. She had 30 years of experience. We seeked her out. We're very, very fortunate to have found her. She's so busy, actually, she's not even taking patients today. And she took us, and she with good results. So I'm not talking her down at all, but you have to understand that the medical treatment has this thing about if it wasn't invented here, it has no merit, right?
By the way, let me interject. The standard of care for most myeloma patients, everybody's different, is a triple drug therapy. It's not specifically chemotherapy in the standard sense that you think of. They're biological drugs. So one is Velcade, which is an injection, and it's called a proteasome inhibitor. The other one is Revlimid, which is another immunotherapy type of drug. I think, I'm not sure, because I never took it, or I did take it and then I was allergic to it, so I couldn't take it.
It's a thalidomide derivative.
So, and the third drug that they usually give you is dexamethasone, which is a steroid, which has anti-inflammatory properties. So I was getting the Velcade, and I did the Revlimid for 2 days, and then dexamethasone. And when that didn't work, my doctor went to bat for me and knew of another drug that they usually only give it to you after all the other drugs are not working. And so I was considered first line when you first start. And so it's not approved to give it to you for when you first start, or at least it wasn't in Israel at the time. But she got it approved. By approved, I mean to be paid for. All of this stuff was paid for. And it was called daratumumab, which is given to you intravenously. So we were thinking, if I'm getting something by IV, let's try to
throw the vitamin C in there.
Vitamin C in the mix,
yeah,
if possible.
No, don't do that.
And the doctor says you can't do that because one of the things when you're taking Velcade is you cannot take extra vitamin C. And
because vitamin C
it fights what the Velcade is doing.
Velcade, right. The vitamin C is an antioxidant, and Velcade tries to oxidize the body. So don't do that. But I had done a lot of research. I mean, at this point, you understand that I'm not sleeping. I'm just reading 24/7. I'm reading medical journals. Every second word I have to translate with Google Translate. And, and I'm trying to make sense of what I'm reading. Anyway, I came across research showing that low dose vitamin C is an antioxidant, just as the doctor said, but high dose is an oxidant. So I'm not fighting her, I'm actually helping her. So we were looking for a doctor who would give her vitamin C treatment. High dose vitamin C. High dose means, so a typical pill will be about a quarter of a gram, and we were doing 50 grams at a time. So that's 250 times the dose that you get in a pill intravenously, because your stomach actually could not tolerate that. So you do that intravenously. And interestingly, vitamin C has the properties of sugar. If you see what it looks exactly like sugar. And it can use the same, it can attach itself to the cancer cells just like sugar, except that it doesn't feed the cancer as sugar does. It kind of almost like blocks the sugar from you're overdosing the cancer with the vitamin C, and the sugar can't get there.
It's like the cancer sees the vitamin C coming, and they open their mouth like, ooh, yum, this good stuff is coming. And then the vitamin C gets in the mouth, so to speak, and clogs it up. Stops it from growing.
I'm not sure that we have it exactly correct, okay?
I mean, but that's my understanding.
But I can tell you that this Dr. Heron told me that when he started the vitamin C treatment, it had dramatic results. So I figured, okay, so we'll do the two of those. When I was talking to Dr. Thomas Seyfried, we were already doing both. And I said to Dr. Seyfried that I tried to do the hyperbaric oxygen treatment, and they refused to do it for her because she's ill. So that's a whole nother story, and I don't necessarily want to get into it unless you want to, but I pulled every string in the book, and they absolutely refused to do it for her. And I said to him, but I'm doing vitamin C. And he said, but that's the same thing, that's the same thing. He's all excited, that's the same thing.
It's the same result.
Yeah, okay, great, amazing, okay. So we're doing vitamin C treatment 3 times a day. She's fasting
3 times a week.
3 times a week, sorry. And after we stop fasting, that's 16 and a half days, we continue to fast about half the week every week anyway. And now we're, so I'm into production and quality, and we have a saying that if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. Like if you want to lose weight, you have to have a scale. And you have to mark down, what your weight is every day. If you can't measure it, you can't improve it. And what Dr. Seifried
Not
did,
that the whole idea was to lose weight. It was, that's his example, is
Just
what
an
he's telling
example,
you. Have
yeah.
to measure your,
So-
just like the doctors are measuring the markers in my blood to see if there's improvement. And there
Right.
had been dramatic improvement within a month.
So now just 1 second. So what we did, we started measuring. So he gave us that tool, Dr. Thomas Seifried. I give him a lot of credit for what happened, good things that happened to us. So we started measuring GKI, her glucose ketone. You divide one measure by the other, and you're supposed to get to a number of 1, which is very, very, very hard to get to. And so she's measuring herself every single day. And of course, while she's fasting for 16 days, she's at like 1 and even below 1 every single day. So we're at the absolute gold standard. But once we started on the ketogenic diet, we completely lost it. So after 3 days, we went back to fasting again. And then we fasted 3-4 days until we insisted that she get to that gold standard, at least for a moment in time every single week. So every single week, in order to accomplish that, we had to fast 3-4 days. And the rest of the time, we did a very, very strict ketogenic diet. Do you want to talk about the ketogenic diet?
Well, you know what? While you pause real quick, I want to ask you, I don't know how to say this right. What was the prognosis? How long were you given to live? Did they say you're going to live this many weeks, months, years?
They won't tell you. I specifically asked at the very beginning of all of this stuff that this journey, you ask the doctor, so what's my prognosis? And when you're thinking of prognosis, you're thinking of a time frame. And she says, we don't talk prognosis. You're very high risk, and we just need to get you started now.
Based on what I read, I came to the conclusion she had 24 months to live.
I figured it was 5 years or less.
Because she was ultra high risk, I figured it was half that. So maybe 2 years, 3 years, something like that. Anyway.
So to tell you how quickly everything happened, from that pre-op x-ray until I started treatment was 2 weeks, which is fantastic.
Because the CT results alone typically take about 10 days to get back. We got it back much, much faster than that. And remember, we interviewed 3 hospitals. And so, yeah, so we started treatment on
August 3rd.
August the 3rd. And when was the x-ray?
July 19th.
July 19th. Okay, so 11, 14 days, 2 weeks.
So the other thing is, once you started treatment in the hospital, you're going there 2 times a week. And the process is approximately 4 or 5 months until you finish the first stage of treatment.
And
then
what
they
is
make
the
a
treatment?
decision.
I don't know if we talked about what it's
The
called.
treatment is the triple drug therapy,
Oh,
which
that's
I ended up getting the biological drugs of Velcade and
Revlimid.
I didn't
Start
have,
with the
I
Revlimid.
started.
Is any of it called chemo or radiation? No.
No, the purpose of radiation is to shrink a solid tumor.
Oh, got it. Right.
I don't have solid tumors. It was in the blood. It was all over the body.
And I want to ask
Although
you that too, just to help people feel better and be inspired by you. Solid cancers are stage 1 through 4, 4 being dire and probably getting close to your deathbed. So what was yours considered?
They don't have stage 1, 2, 3,
Equivalent to
4.
stage 4.
But they
Ultra high risk
it's
is what they
ultra high
call it,
risk.
which is the worst diagnosis you can get.
But then
It's like being diagnosed with stage 4.
so you start at this point, you start researching it as Dr. Google, whatever, and you find, oh, I know somebody who has myeloma, and then you talk to them, and you find support groups and Facebook groups and what have you. And then you find out that although everybody's myeloma diagnosis is different, it could be very, very different. they live decades.
I-
They manage it. They say that, just like high blood pressure is managed, the doctors tell me that with myeloma, we can manage it.
Okay, I'm
So we-
sorry to interrupt you, but this is what I don't understand. It was in your bones. It was causing your bones to break. That sounds like you had 2 weeks to 2 months to live. How did you estimate 2 years? You're falling apart. The cancer's everywhere.
I
I
was-
imagine
the
without treatment, you
no,
could have lived hardly at all.
without the treatment, it would have been impossible.
Without the treatment, you're
It's
gone.
with the treatment that you live.
Okay.
And I
3 to
also
4
have to
years,
tell
5
you
years.
that in the field of myeloma, the drugs that they're using now are not that old. They might be 10 years old, 15 years old at the most. I mean, daratumumab that I was given is relatively new. I mean, I don't remember looking it up, but I do know they're all very, very new. So if
Meaning they
you
don't
had
have history on
if
it.
you had a diagnosis of multiple myeloma 20 years ago, I mean,
You did get
it's-
daratumumab.
it's like bad, very bad news. You have a very low life expectancy. But be that as it may, I have heard of people right now who have had myeloma for 10 years, 15 years. So it's not a death sentence, like certain cancers are very known to be low life expectancy. And when you look up life expectancy of somebody who has multiple myeloma, it tells you it's very low. You say 5 years, for example. But that's because they haven't been able to follow patients long enough with the new medications that are coming out. There's newer and newer things. There's even new stuff going on since I was diagnosed, and that was only a little over 2 years ago.
But I can tell you that the hospitals they insist that multiple myeloma is incurable.
Mm.
Incurable. That's what they say.
So they manage it. They manage it with medication. So the idea is, like I was telling you very quick, you have what they refer to as an induction phase. They give you the medication over a period of 4 to 5 months. And then if you progress and you're responding well to the medication, the next step in the standard of care is a procedure that they call a stem cell transplant. And what that is
High dose chemo, ultra high dose
it's
chemo.
really ultra high dose chemo with stem cell rescue.
And they only give it to you if you're doing well on the standard care, because they're saying, okay, we've got the cancer on the run, so now let's go and chase it and kill it. And so they give you melphalan, which will kill an elephant.
So I can get into that later. And then the third phase is what they call maintenance. They want to maintain your level.
The
So
low level.
I'm in the maintenance level right now.
I should pause real quick, just ask you, did you do that last thing that you said, the stem cell with the high dose?
Everything.
You did, okay.
We did what they recommended. I have to tell you, I was very much against it. Okay, so I want to cut to the chase. I want to explain, give you kind of the end result, and then we can circle back. So we did the same tests, the blood, the
PET scan,
bone marrow
biopsy,
and the PET scan 3 months later. Well, the blood they do all the time, like twice a week, right? So the blood was dramatically falling. Like the IgA, which I told you was 10 times what a normal person would have, and that's the marker for cancer, was just plummeting. Within
in 1 month after I started
within 1 month,
medication.
it fell 80%. 80%.
And I had just started the high dose vitamin C at that point also. And then within 3 months, it was below normal.
So we did all the tests 3 months after diagnosis. So we are doing all these tests for the second time, right? So we do the bone marrow biopsy, right? We check the plasma cells in the bone marrow, which is the cancer, which was 70 to 80% before. 70 to 80% of the bone marrow was cancer. And 3 months later, the same test shows that there is no cancer. zero. 3 months
Now,
later, zero.
the doctor was expecting 5 to 10%.
She told us, if you're down to 5 to 10%, you're doing well. She wasn't, I don't know if even she was expecting that, but she said, if you get there, you're doing well. I mean, she was encouraged.
That was going to be my question. How do you compare either what the doctors told you about patients or patients you met? Because some people listening would say, well, the traditional medicine is what saved you, and you're leaning towards it's the additional alternative that saved me. So how do you compare to others? It sounded like the doctor was shocked. You'd be lucky to be 5 to 10%. You're at 0. So can you tell us how you compare? How do you
Tell
know
them what the doctor's technician did.
We went back. Okay, right. Okay, so I just want to finish this part and then I'll answer your question in great detail. Then we did the PET scan. Oh, I'm sorry, back to the bone marrow biopsy. There's also the FISH test, which looked at those 5 markers. 3 of them she had were defective. They were all perfect.
They were gone.
They were
That was
gone.
normal.
It was, I don't know, it's like a genetic thing and it's, totally gone. They don't even claim to heal that. Okay. And the PET scan showed that all the cancer was gone. There was no cancer. And the bones had healed.
how many weeks, months after the initial testing
3
was
months.
this?
3 months. The bones had healed. Now you understand that for the bones to heal, that takes time. That doesn't happen in one day. You don't do a PET scan every day. A PET scan is a very, very expensive procedure. So don't do it every day. But that cancer was gone for a while because the bones had healed. So we say 3 months because we took the PET scan 3 months later. But maybe the cancer was gone after 1 month or 2 months.
It was like
And really-
3.5
And,
months.
and
yes.
not much was happening during that time except that the fact that she was fasting. So in the early part, right?
No hyperbaric at that point?
Well, she didn't do hyperbaric.
Oh, wait,
Couldn't
the
get it.
vitamin C.
We did vitamin C instead, right? So we started with the fasting immediately. The vitamin C started a little bit later. So
The vitamin C, we started a few weeks to a month after I was diagnosed till we could find where we can get it.
right. So here there are 2 reasons why I believe that what we did had a dramatic effect. Well, I'll give you 3 reasons why I think it had a dramatic effect on her results. Okay. One of them is what the head of the department told us. This Dr. Nagler, beautiful, beautiful person. I would like to adopt him. He's like 80 years old, retired. Just a beautiful person. He said to her, Elise, I don't know if you got lucky or the good Lord is looking out for you, but your results are very unexpected. And it's not it's his very. I memorized it exactly the way he said it. Your results are basically what he was saying. We never saw a case like yours. We've never seen a case like yours. And this is one of the largest hospitals in Israel, one of the finest hospitals in the world. And he's the head of the department, and he's been there for 50 years, and like he lectures all over the world. He knows what to expect. And your results, Elise, is very unexpected. So that's one. Number 2, the 5 problems when they did the FISH test, these are genetic issues. They all disappeared within 3 months. So how is that possible? Their medication doesn't do that. All their medication does is try to get rid of the cancerous cells. That's all they do. They don't heal genetic issues and all these problems. And all 3 went away. So that's number 2. The immune system can do that. Their drugs cannot. They don't even claim that it does that. And the third one is, and this is really interesting. When the doctor told us that her plasma cells went from 80% to 0, she's looking at the screen and she's kind of looking up at the ceiling and she says, well, it's not 0.
And then my heart sunk, right?
You have 1.5 to 2%, but it's not monoclonal plasma cells, it's polyclonal plasma cells. And we say, Banglit bevakasha, like, can you please speak in our language? What
Tell it to me in
heck
English, not medicalese.
What does that mean? So she says, well, that's what you want. Healthy people have 2, 3, 4, 5% polyclonal plasma cells, and you have 1.5, 2% polyclonal plasma cells, but the monoclonal is 0. So why was she so perplexed? Well, she was perplexed because their medication cannot differentiate between monoclonal and polyclonal. It just gets rid of all the plasma cells. And if it was able to bring the monoclonal, the cancerous cells, down from 80% to zero, it should have knocked the 3, 4, 5% polyclonal cells to zero as well. It didn't. The polyclonal cells were still there. The only thing that could have differentiated between the two is her immune system. Okay, so that's, I think, number 3, and I'll give you one more. We said to her that the tests that you do don't really see things that well. Like they say, oh, your cancer is 70 to 80%, because they don't, it's not very precise. It's not, the resolution is not very high. But there is a test that you can conduct. You know, I'm reading, I think I'm a medical doctor today. So there is a test called next generation sequencing. And I want you to do that on, and that can see like 1 myeloma cell in a million. And they don't do it for myeloma patients because in their view, myeloma is incurable. So it doesn't matter if they find 5,000 or 7,000, because that thing is going to grow and it's going to be 150,000 tomorrow, right? So there's no point in doing that test. But in her case, she too was very interested, I think, to find out what this next generation sequencing will determine. Okay, this is a really high resolution test. This really sees like everything, right? Okay, so they do the test. This was also 3 months after. All this is 3 months after. And we go to visit her. And so, doctor, what was the result of the next generation sequencing? She said, I have an interesting story to tell you. Well, first I'll tell you, it's 0. They didn't find any. Okay, but I have an interesting story to tell you. The technician, when she got the result, you know, normally they enter it in the computer. Right? They put the number in the computer.
The lab technician.
They put it in the computer. And she called me. She picked up the phone and called me. She says, I don't find any myeloma cells. Like, how's that possible? You know, I don't know, like, did we mix up the vials? I don't know. Should I rerun the test? I don't know exactly what she said, but she was very, very perplexed. And our doctor said, no, I know this case. This is an exceptional case. You did everything correctly. You don't have to rerun the test. So I gave you 4 reasons why I think it was no, we're not saying that the medical treatment didn't help. And if somebody has myeloma, by all means, do everything that your myeloma doctor tells you to do.
It all.
Do this in addition to that. In addition to that. You know, if we had not taken the medical treatment that the hospitals do, and we would have done it just, you know, just a fasting vitamin C, and she would have been cured, I would tell you that. But we did do what the hospital, although I have to tell you, I was very, very bothered by the dexamethasone, which is supposed to reduce inflammation in the body. Because what dexamethasone does, it shoots up your sugar level in your body. Okay, and when I mentioned to Dr. Seyfried that she's being given dexamethasone, he said, I wouldn't take that thing if my life depended on it. So when we went to the hospital, so I said we did everything that the hospital, you know, told us to do. Well, not quite exactly. When they gave us the pills in the hospital to take, I said to just take 1 or 2 of them. Don't take all 10, you know? So, so we did that.
Dr. Tibor.
Dr. Tibor, yeah.
So I have so many questions, but interrupt me, go on as long as you want, because you're going to be saving so many lives. I have some friends who are going to be listening who have diagnosis.
So ask the questions.
I know, I want to do one, I want to say one
everything,
more.
yeah.
We had to find a doctor to do her vitamin C treatment. And I wanted to find someone who really knows what he's doing, because, you know, anybody can give vitamin C. If he's a doctor, even if he's a nurse, he can, you know, stick the needle in you and, you know, give you the vitamin C. But we wanted someone who's an expert.
Let me tell you, for example, we went on vacation for a couple of months after all of this stuff. And I wanted to keep the vitamin C going. And I found an oncologist where I can continue my standard care medication, but I also wanted to do the vitamin C. And so a lot of places offer vitamin C therapy, intravenously. But
In
they
Miami, they do it everywhere.
but they give you just a little bit. So I knew exactly how much or what I was supposed to be receiving. And a lot of them would not do that. So
They refused.
just vitamin C, high dose vitamin C, it's a generic term, but it has to be like any medication, it has to be the proper dosage.
Like you said, it shouldn't be the antioxidative dosage, but
But-
the oxidative doses. Is that what you're
Something
Right,
like that.
but it also has to be the right quantity,
Right.
and being done under a good clinical procedure, so we did find a place to continue it. So go,
Okay,
what
it's a
you were
little
gonna
confusing
say.
because, yeah, so we needed to find, so I'm going back now to the beginning, right? So she has multiple myeloma. We're looking for someone, I read about Linus Pauling and how he believed in high dose vitamin C. Dr. Herron, who's communicating with me by email, who also had done multiple myeloma, dramatic results when he started doing vitamin C. So I need a vitamin C doctor. Now, I was doing a lot of research, but I have to tell you that I have a son, whom you know. His name is Davi. And Davi is absolutely brilliant. I don't know if you know who Davi is. He's absolutely brilliant. And he's doing a lot of research too, right? And so I tell him that I need in Israel, he's actually the CEO of a company that does military stuff for Israel. So he has connections to Israel. I said, I need a doctor who knows how to do vitamin C in Israel. And he puts me on to this Dr. Mel Littman.
In Israel.
In Israel. A guy from Canada, licensed doctor in Canada, comes to Israel, gets himself licensed in Israel, and does alternative medicine. So I look him up, and he's got a video online, a YouTube video online. He's lecturing to students of Ben Gurion University about cancer and alternative treatments. And the video is 2 hours long, and he's talking fast, and he's never repeating himself, and he goes on, and the man has knowledge. He's got an incredible amount of knowledge. He starts off by saying, that cancer is proliferating. The number of deaths from cancer in America is higher than it's ever been before. And they've been working at this for 70 years. And, they had the war on cancer, and they've spent trillions of dollars. And, basically, essentially, kind of to no effect. I wouldn't say to no effect, because people do live longer with cancer, but as many people are dying today as ever before. Anyway, so I'm blown away by his knowledge. He quoted, I don't know how many.
Study after study after study.
And in the end, at the very end of his speech, and he talks about, he has specific research, and he's flipping pages, another research, vitamin C, vitamin E, vitamin D, back and forth, and on and on and on, literally for 2 hours. And at the end, he says, and there was a patient, a little girl, 3 years old, who had some kind of a brain cancer. I can't even pronounce it.
I think multiblastoma.
Glioblastoma multiforme, perhaps?
Right, something like that.
Like
Yeah,
GM, maybe.
97% of the people die, and even the people who live, the kids who live.
I think it's glioblastoma, probably.
Glioblastoma, right. So he says he knows of this case, this little girl, 3 years old, who did vitamin C treatment, and it healed her. And today she's 16 years old. And he knows the case intimately, because the little girl is his daughter.
Oh, wow.
I had tears after listening to this, and
he went into the hospital. They were treating her with very heavy chemo, this little 3-year-old girl, and he's giving her vitamin C. And high dose vitamin C, and after the first treatment of chemo, the chemo is gone. They've never seen anything like it. The cancer is gone. The doctor has never seen anything like it. So Dr. Mel Littman says to the oncologist, okay, what do we do now? So he says, well, normally what we do is, another round of chemo. And he said, but the child doesn't have cancer. And he said, well, I guess, okay, you're right. You know, maybe we shouldn't do another round of chemo. They never did another round of chemo. And the little girl today is, I think, 17 years old, perfectly healthy. So we went to
She might
Dr.
even
Mel.
be 18 by now. Who
Yeah,
knows?
she might even be 18. So we went to Dr. Mel Littman, and Mel Littman, boy, did he do a job for us. I'm telling you, anybody who has any kind of cancer has got to go to Dr. Mel Littman because he will heal you.
He also suggested I take certain vitamins and supplements. And the Velcade that I've been receiving at the hospital, one of the major side effects that a lot of people have is painful neuropathy in their hands and feet. And I've been taking it for 2.5 years, no neuropathy. And I think it's because of some of the supplements that he has me taking.
So besides the vitamin C, he did vitamin B complex. He put in magnesium, selenium into the intravenous. I mean, he put everything in there. We had so what is the silver? The
magnesium sulfate, selenium, B complex, colloidal silver.
Colloidal silver. You know, in the olden days, before antibiotics, yeah, if you had a cut and it wasn't healing, they used to spritz colloidal silver on it and it would heal. So he put it in the
saline bag.
In a saline bag and fed it to her intravenously to bring down her well, instead of the dexamethasone to
Glucose?
No, to
inflammation.
The inflammation, yeah, to get rid of the inflammation. So so he definitely, you know, was very, very critical in this
in my healing process.
In the healing process.
Did you ever share with the doctors or go back to them all these other things you've done so that they understand the miracles that they were seeing on the lab work and the scans?
We told Dr. Nagler both about vitamin C and also about fasting. And to his credit, because doctors don't accept anything that they didn't invent, but to his credit, he's such a beautiful person. To his credit, he said, if I have another patient like you, ultra high risk, I will tell them that you fasted. And if I may, I might even give them your telephone number.
But I think they discourage the vitamin C.
Yeah, they discourage the vitamin C. So I believe the vitamin
fasting, they figured that's not harmful.
So when you, okay, so I want to go to the stem cell transplant, because once you've gone through this thing and, you know, your plasma cells are down to 5-10%, so it's a big success. And, you know, okay, the cancer is on the run, so now let's go after them and let's kill them. So they give you this treatment of ultra high chemo called they use a product called melphalan, which really can kill an elephant. And
there's a lot of people in the myeloma community, even though it's standard medical care, they refuse to have the stem cell transplant.
They call it
because it could be very harmful. And there's, you know, like any medical treatment, that they give you the pros and the cons, and some of the cons are pretty bad. So a lot of people, what they do is first you have your stem cells harvested. It's a procedure they call. They hook you up to this machine, which sort of looks like a dialysis machine, and they take your blood out and your bone marrow that way, and they
harvest the young.
I don't know what they do with it, but they cleanse it or get it ready to go back into your body. So some people have it harvested and then they put it on ice. The hospital maintains it. And if I want to do the actual procedure in the future, I can. So now I have supposedly clean blood, as cancer-free as I will ever get it, hopefully. Very low levels of myeloma is the theory, or maybe nothing. And you can put it back into your body. So what they do is you go into you're checked into the hospital. And remember,
explain what stem cell transplant is.
That's what
they harvest your young, healthy stem cells, as she mentioned before, at this point, hopefully very little myeloma in it. and then they give you this heavy treatment of chemo, which kills all the stem cells in your body, and you would probably die. And then after that, after the chemo is out of your body, they re-inject the stem cells that they harvested to save your life, basically.
So this procedure is done in the hospital. Some places in the United States do it as an outpatient procedure, but a lot of places do it inpatient. And don't forget, this was in the height of COVID. This was in December of 2020. So my biggest concern is, although the nurses in the hospital personnel are there to take care of me, I needed him.
Well, I said
and he wanted to be there too. And in the United States and other countries, if anybody had been in the hospital, whether it was a heart attack or whatever it was, even to go get your cancer treatment, you go into the hospital by yourself, even as a day outpatient, right? But here, we were very fortunate that he was able to come with me whenever I had treatment in the hospital, the twice weekly. When I had the stem cell hospitalization, he was in the room with me. There was another bed for him.
So I told that I didn't want her to do the stem cell transplant. I did research on that. 1% of the people who do it die. 7% get other cancers that are worse than the myeloma itself, the myeloma that she has. So I didn't want her to do it. I thought she was cured. There was no point in doing it. Anyway, I said to the doctor, she wanted to do it. Elise wanted to do it. I was afraid to insist, because if God forbid something happens, I didn't want to get blamed for it. Yeah. So she insisted to do the full treatment. So I said to the doctor, okay, on one condition. I'm in the room with her 24/7. And I'm expecting her to say, there's no way that you're going into the room. We're talking about 3-4 weeks in the hospital, isolated in the room. I was expecting her, no way, right? Because in the US, they wouldn't let anybody in. And she says, okay. I thought she didn't understand me. I said, just 1 second. I want to be very clear about this. Okay. I'm going to be with her 24/7, day and night. I'm not leaving her alone for 1 second. And she says, okay. Okay. No problem.
And where was this? What country or state?
Israel.
Yeah.
Israel, Sheba Hospital.
I think they probably realized, since you're not coming in and out, that it was safer, right? Because you're going to stay with her.
They have a completely different attitude here in Israel than in the United States. Here, they permitted you to come in.
Israel? Wait, during the virus, they were letting people visit in Israel?
Yes.
Well, you're talking about visit to fly or visit in the hospital?
No, I meant hospital, because here in America, you got it right. It doesn't matter if you have cancer, heart attack, ER, you were alone, you died alone. It was horrible.
I went with her.
I don't know what the Corona wards were like, okay? All I can tell you is my experience in this particular ward. And as well as for the cancer treatment center. In the cancer treatment center, I come in with whoever I come in with.
Yeah, they permit it. They encourage it. It's a completely different culture.
So
here
we were told to expect to be in the hospital for this procedure.
It's shocking. In the United States, people have to die alone.
Yep,
they can't have family with them as they're dying.
Yep.
So
here they want family.
And funerals were limited.
Yes.
Outside, outdoor, fresh air funerals were limited.
We were expected to be in the hospital for a minimum of 3 weeks. Minimum of 3 weeks. Could be 6 weeks. Because what happens is, they give you this high dose chemo, which is an IV for an hour maybe, and then the next day they inject your stem cells into you.
Well, they flush it out. It takes 24 hours to get it out, to get the melphalan out of your body. That's the chemo. They flush it out with saline, and then they rescue you by giving you back your stem cells that they harvested earlier.
And I forget exactly the terminologies, one of your blood counts or whatever, like hits rock bottom and you're very immunocompromised, more so than ever before.
You have to be isolated.
And you have to be isolated for a week. And they monitor you right and left, and they take your blood every day. And you're on a saline drip constantly. and you're supposed to have nausea, vomiting,
Terrible, terrible reaction.
terrible reactions,
Sores in your mouth.
mouth. And so what we did.
So one of the conditions that I had for Elise, because she insisted on doing this, on one condition, you start fasting 4 days before, and you continue to fast until the melphalan, until the chemo is completely out of your body. It was a 6 or 7 day fast.
So we go into the hospital, and we had been I'd been fasting a day before, and they deliver you your food. I said, no, I don't want the food.
She's fasting.
And so I fasted during the procedure for a few days, like he said.
6, 7
and
days.
There's other things when they give you the melphalan, everybody tells you need to have ice chips in your mouth so you don't have sores, starting a half an hour, an hour before. I forget exactly what it is. So you're chewing ice chips constantly for like 2 hours. Your mouth is like frozen solid.
Okay, but to cut to the chase.
But the bottom line is I had
no sores in your mouth.
no sores in my mouth.
No nausea.
No nausea. A touch of diarrhea.
But really like nothing, because she was fasting. There's nothing in her.
And I was energetic.
She gets up out of bed every day, which is surprising.
I get dressed.
Puts on her
I take a
makeup,
shower.
gets dressed. Okay, I have a video of her in the room right after this heavy dose of chemo, whether she's completely bald, and she's laughing, and we're having an incredible time.
And my doctor comes in to visit me to see how I'm doing. And
she's all dressed, makeup.
She was kind of surprised to see me in the state I was.
Are you guys fasting? Are you guys like, yep, we're fasting.
So in answer to your question, the doctors knew down deep we were fasting. They didn't really know about the vitamin C until later, the high dose vitamin C, but they dismissed it. The fasting, they will say, works.
Well,
they don't have a problem with that.
Well, Nagler said he would tell other patients that you fasted.
So this procedure is, I was out of the hospital in 2.5 weeks, by the way, instead of the 3 to 6 weeks.
I think because of the fasting.
And then you're highly immunocompromised because of the whole procedure for about 3 months. And you need to isolate. And again, this was the beginning. I had this procedure the first week of December of 2020. So this is still in the height of Corona.
Anyway, it's been 2 years now. This trip that we took together with the myeloma. And since that 3 months after the diagnosis, when she was determined to be clean, all her blood tests are perfect. Everything is absolutely perfect. And I keep telling her she's cured, and the doctor keeps saying there's no cure for myeloma. I think we found it.
So after about another year afterwards, I kept doing the high dose vitamin C. I stopped the ketogenic diet once I had that stem cell transplant because I was pretty white. I was really white. It took a while to get back to normal. And here I am today. I'm doing the maintenance medications that the doctors
which I'm objecting
to take. And we hope others can learn from my experience.
Thank you. I have a few questions. First, I did interview Dr. Thomas Seyfried.
I saw your interview.
And Guy Tenenbaum said what you said. He said, I said to the doctors, you're doing a PET scan, you're giving me traceable radioactive sugar. Obviously, sugar has to do with cancer, when the doctors were saying, no, don't worry, eat what you want. Sugar has nothing to do with cancer. So it's interesting you said that too. I want to ask you a few other things about exercise. Tell me about fasting, exercise. Should we do it? Shouldn't we do it?
So the True North, they are the world expert on fasting. They say you shouldn't be doing exercise while you're fasting. You should preferably just lie in bed or maybe slowly walk around, because I think the reason is because when you do exercise, what your body will do is it will take the protein and it will what do you call it, converted into sugar. Your body's able to do that.
And you can learn
So they don't
lose
want,
muscle mass.
and you can lose muscle mass. So they don't want you to do that.
So
Just lie in bed. It's called water fasting in a state of rest. That's what they call it. Water fasting, water only fasting in a state of rest.
That makes sense because you need all your energy to deal with the fasting since you're not ingesting any energy. You're using your
No,
body.
apparently it's actually healthier. You're doing a better job for your body if you do it while you're at rest.
You know what? That goes along with my theory, and I found other doctors say this during the virus. I noticed when I used to be on Facebook, friends would tell me, or I'd see it on social media, my friend is a bodybuilder and they didn't do well with the virus. My friend is a long distance runner. They didn't do well with the virus. And I started finding doctors who do the visceral MRIs or some sort of scan, and they would notice people who over exercise have a layer of fat, as if we cause inflammation when we're extremists. These doctors, I'm friendly with 2 lung doctors that said they saw people not doing well with the virus. Not only were they chubby people, but typically alcoholics. So it seems like inflammation in general is not good, and overdoing anything is not good, like you're saying. So they said, hey, do fasting, but don't do the exercise.
I'm really curious if the problem that they had, and I don't have the answer, if these guys that you're talking about, these bodybuilders, if their problem was with COVID or with the injections.
Right. This is before that. Right. I agree. And this was before that. In other words, they're living a lifestyle of extremes, whatever they're doing, the supplements they're taking, the exercising too much might cause a cytokine storm, because my dad was hospitalized for the virus and I pulled him out, got him to the right treatment. They were treating him for pneumonia, which is, let's say, inflammation of the lungs. I might not be saying that right, but it was inflammation of the entire body. He had cytokine storm because once the virus died, his body reacted with a cytokine storm. So the hospital was killing him. I pulled him out and brought him to a Dr. Thomas Yadigar, who treated cytokine storm. He did use dexamethasone, but he also used Actemra, which is tocilizumab, which stops cytokine storm, which is used for.
Well, your father didn't have cancer, so dexamethasone is fine.
Right, true. So I wanted to ask you anything else that you wanted to say, because I want you to be able to use this interview for friends, for family, anyone who reaches out to you. So what else do you think you want to say to tell people? And the second question would be, what are you doing to maintain? Which would either of you recommend? Because one person is using medications, one person probably wouldn't recommend it, but what else do you want to say? And what are you currently doing? And what do you recommend?
I think that what people should be doing is they should be fasting 2, 3, 4 times a year. And I'm talking about a fast which is, say, 7 days long. It's a cure-all. Fasting is an absolute cure-all. You're healing yourself, you're detoxing yourself, you're renewing your immune system, and then your body heals you. You will live longer, you will live healthier.
So, like you said, we do a combination of the standard medical care and we augment it. And it's worked for me.
Well, she does, but I really object to it. I think it's not necessary for her to continue to do the maintenance. She does not have myeloma. The hospitals say that it's incurable, but I think what they mean is that they cannot cure it. I don't think she has myeloma. I think she's healed. And but she has to, maintain a healthy lifestyle. Honestly, we kind of fell off the wagon. And I think, and we need to get back to that healthy lifestyle that we were living, which is fasting every once in a while and eating healthily. You have sugar, stay away from the wheat, the bread, the cake, just have to stay away from all that. Preferably, so I'm a little bit conflicted whether the diet should be kind of like a carnivore diet, a ketogenic diet, or a vegetarian diet. Like there's so much controversy out there, and I really don't know which one is the correct one, but I'm leaning towards doing a carnivore diet.
I lean a little bit that way too. It's very difficult, like you said, that we can't depend on the doctors and hospitals fully. We have to be our own advocate, our own counselor for this. So when I give usually the example in my interviews, there's Chris Wark, W-A-R-K, chrisbeatcancer.com. So I've listened to him for years. He had some type of colon or gastrointestinal cancer, and he feels that a vegan lifestyle saved his life. When I speak with other people, such as Dr. Dannenberg, he used meat and organs, and he refers us to the Hungarian hospital called the Metabolic Center for Disease or Cancer, and they use meat and fats. And why is that? Because in plants, fruits and vegetables, we cannot get heme iron, vitamin B12,
Right. You have
harness,
to supplement it.
taurine. I hope I'm probably missing a few, but there's things we can't get. And I know for me, I volunteer my blood sometimes to the Red Cross. I'm O blood and I'm CMV negative, so they really need it for babies. And often before I realized, it's maybe been since the virus that I started studying, okay, I think I need red meat because I was having anxiety, possibly depression, and I couldn't give to the Red Cross unless I had to remember, and I didn't have a lot of education then. I'd say, I need meat before I give to the Red Cross, and then I would not be denied giving blood because they would deny me a lot of the time saying your iron is too low. And I just made some assumption that I needed iron. In addition, years back, when I was really into smoothies, I learned somewhere that spinach, if you put spinach with other foods, it blocks, I think it's vitamin D, magnesium, and iron. So that confused me too. Now it's all coming back together.
I want to talk about vitamin D
Please.
since you brought it up. Yeah, I see Elise also made a note about vitamin D. So I was, she wasn't. So we were very worried about COVID because she was very immunocompromised. So I was reading that if your vitamin D level, at the level in your blood is above initially 35, then they said 50, then you're not going to die of COVID. And they did some really incredible tests in Israel. And they came with that conclusion that if your vitamin D level was in that neighborhood, let's call it over 50, you will not die of COVID.
Does it mean you won't get it or you just won't die of it?
You might get it, but you won't die of it. It won't kill you. You have resistance to it. And typically in the medical community says that a level of 30 is sufficient. That's all you need, 30. And so we tested her vitamin D level, which they were not testing at the time, but so we requested them to test it. And she had a level of 27. So it was even below what the medical community said. Never mind 50, it was at 27. So I did what no normal person would do. Do you take vitamin D?
I don't take it. I hope that I should do a blood test. Thank you for reminding me. I try to just eat instead of taking supplements because that's what I was going to ask you too. You went to the proper doctor, but how do we know what's in the supplement? Who's manufacturing that vitamin C drip? You went to the best, but how do we know which vitamin C we should use? So we should talk about that.
Well, I use Dr. Dovey to determine which vitamin D I should use. Okay, he told me which one to use.
That's your son?
My son, yeah.
He's not a doctor.
And he said, do vitamin D3 with K2 because they, and then I told Dr. Mel Littman about, D and K2 and he said, yes, that's the one you should take because the two of them work better together. And he explained why. And so typically you would take, if you go to the doctors and your vitamin D level is low, they will tell you to take 1,000 or 2,000 IUs a day. 1,000 or 2,000 IUs a day. We gave her, this lady here,
drum roll,
an incredible 250,000 IUs over a weekend. Okay.
Is it fighting off the cancer or fighting off the virus?
So
both.
In my research, I came to the conclusion that a level of 50 in your blood will protect you from COVID and 70 will fight cancer. So I was very determined to get her above 70. We actually got her to 126, I think.
Is there a point though where it might be toxic or unhealthy?
Generally, my vitamin D levels hover around 90 to 100 most of the time.
It was 27 before diagnosis, at diagnosis. So the medical community will tell you it's between 30 and 100, you're fine. They don't want it to be over 100. But I can tell you they have absolutely no evidence that a level above 100 is a problem. And even there are examples where people had as high as 400 and there was no negative impact on them. So 100, 120, I think is absolutely fine.
When my levels do get over 100, I back off.
She stops taking a
I
vitamin D.
stopped taking it. Instead of taking it every day, I might do it every other day,
And
but
what
I'm
company do you trust? What source, where are they even getting the vitamin D from? Please.
So I think it's very, very important to do vitamin D.
This is what we take.
It's very inexpensive. It's $3 for the bottle. I think it lasts for a year.
It's by Thorne Research. It's vitamin D
K/K3.
D and K.
K2.
D3, K2. You can get it on iHerb. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it at most health food stores. And it's liquid. You just put a couple of drops.
Yeah.
How many drops do you use?
I think, okay, so
Louise?
the Harikot will tell you, I don't want this to sound like an advertising, but I think it's very important that people test their vitamin D. You have to understand that throughout our evolution, we worked on the farms 3/4 naked. All we had is a loincloth. We had the sun the whole day from morning to night. Our body's unable to produce this. We get it from the sun, and we're not in the sun anymore. In fact, in Israel, where you have sun all year round, most people are vitamin D deficient. The only ones in Israel that are not vitamin D deficient are the lifeguards that are literally naked all day in the sun. So we need supplementation. I heard, Fauci was being interviewed on COVID, and the interviewer asked him, "What about vitamin D?" Very interesting question, right? Because he never talked about vitamin D. And he said, "I believe in vitamin D. I take 5,000 IUs every day. The doctors only recommend 1 or 2." Okay, so you have to get yourself tested and get yourself up to at least above 70. I don't care what the medical community says.
Okay.
Keep it above 70. Now, as far as what else to do to keep yourself healthy, you have to fast.
Okay.
You have to fast 4, 5, 7 days at a time, maybe 3 times a year, 4 times a year. That will heal your body. It will renew your immune system. You don't have to keep running to doctors. You don't have to do all kinds of scans. They're all very harmful. And, maybe if you have a problem, maybe you don't even want to know. Anyway, but that will heal you.
And listen to your body. I had pain. Eventually, I was lucky. It was diagnosed with an X-ray for elective surgery. But if you have pain in your body, don't dismiss it. Follow through, and don't let the doctors poo-poo it. Nobody poo-pooed it for me, but listen to your body.
I think my last question, unless you can think of what else you want to teach us, is I do fasting from time to time. How do you get over, there's a point you get so weak, you can't think straight. How do you get over that hump to do a 3 or 4 day?
I'm sorry. The first 3 days are the hardest. Go 7 days, because day 4, 5, 6 is quite easy, actually. You don't feel the hunger, but don't run around. Don't be active. You have to kind of stay in bed or mope around the house. That's very important.
Okay. And not everybody has the luxury to do that. You have to get up and you have to go to work or take your kids to school.
Yeah, and
so it's easier said than done. We're just the two of us. We don't have to worry about anybody else.
Okay, Malia, you're losing a pound of fat a day. That means, where does the fat go? It burns and it fuels your body. So you're getting approximately 3,000 calories a day. So stop complaining about hunger, because you're being fully fed. You don't need more than 3,000 calories a day.
And most of the hunger is you're used to eating. You're used to eating breakfast time, lunchtime, dinner time.
I like to stay in the bedroom, because when I come into the kitchen, the first thing I see is a refrigerator. Okay, in the bedroom, I'm fine. I'm on my phone. I play with my phone all day, and I'm fasting, and it doesn't bother me. I don't even know that I'm fasting.
I think we covered everything. Is there anything else you want to tell your friends and family and people who are listening to help save their life?
I don't really think so. I think I pretty much said it all. Listen to your body and listen to your doctors, but be your own advocate and find what works for you.
I know my last question. People get cancer perhaps for a reason. It's either random or, someone has a genetic defect, which we know from Seafried it's not true, but I'm just saying what people think. Bad luck, why do you think it happened to you? Were you eating a certain way, exercising or lack of, or exposed to anything? Were you eating a lot of sugar?
I wasn't exposed to anything. I do know that a lot of people who were exposed to certain ate things, like in Vietnam, for example, they ended up getting myeloma. But not everybody who has myeloma had any
We
exposure.
eat horribly.
But we eat too much sugar. Cake. Oh my God, the cakes here
Walk
are
on the street.
delicious.
60-70% of Americans are obese. They're overweight. What the hell is going on? And it's not a genetic disease. It's a metabolic disease. It has to do with the foods that you eat. We eat incredibly unhealthily. So you asked, what should people do? They should eat healthily. Just cut out the sugar, cut out the bread, cut out the cake, just cut it out completely. And it is a metabolic disease. There's a problem. The medical community is completely off on cancer. They will never in a million years solve cancer. More than 50 years ago, Richard Nixon, you might have heard of him. He was the president of the United States. He declared war on cancer. The government put trillions of dollars into the medical community to try to solve cancer. More people are dying of cancer today than ever before because they are going off in the wrong direction. They think it's a genetic disease. And if you come and you say, no, it's a metabolic disease, you cannot get research funding from the government. If you think that it's a genetic disease, then you'll get the funding. So everybody's trying to figure this thing out from that point of view. By the way, you know that Dr. Seifert is a geneticist. He got his PhD in genetics. So he understands genetics. It's not a genetic disease. He will tell you it's a metabolic disease. It's a problem with your mitochondria. Your mitochondria is a little piece of inside your cell, which is responsible for apoptosis, and meaning to take your unhealthy cells and kill them off so that new cells can be born. And if there's a problem with the mitochondria, then what happens is that old and unhealthy cells are permitted to remain alive and to multiply, and then you get cancer from that. And so you can, because it's a metabolic disease, you can solve it by eating correctly or by fasting. But just eat healthily. I think there was I don't remember the name of the philosopher, it was a philosopher that lived more than 2,000 years ago, and he said that 25% of what you eat provides you with your life, with sustenance, and the other 75% sustains your doctor's life. In other words, you don't need the other 75%. It just makes you sick, and so the doctor is making a living off you. So we've known this for a long time. Every religion fasts. You wonder why. Moses went up on the mountain, he fasted for 40 days. People think this is a myth, because if you fast for 3 days, you die. Absolutely not true. At True North, they fast people for 40 days all the time, and they come out healthy. So fasting is very healthy. It's been known forever. I don't know what happened. We lost this information somewhere along the way. So eat healthily and fast every once in a while, and you'll be healthy.
Thank you. Well, I hope everyone will share this with friends and family, neighbors, everyone you care about, because there's so much information from Elise and Tibor and Dr. Dannenberg, Guy Tenenbaum, Dr. Seifried. There's so many interviews. Dr. Ovadia also is a cardiologist who believes in this. And that's actually the last thing I wanted to say was cholesterol. You were mentioning something about it, and the sun. We're talking about the sun. From what I've learned is you need the sun to help cholesterol do what it needs to do. And your son Dovey said to take the D3. So the cholesterol helps convert vitamin K1 to K2. And we need all this for testosterone and estrogen. So I do recommend everyone talk to your doctor or do some studies yourself, read yourself, and decide if you need that cholesterol lowering medication, the statins, Crestor, Lipitor, Zocor, Mevacor, all of the Prevacor. Do you need it, or is there something you could do with lifestyle? Or maybe do you not need to worry about triglycerides? I'd love to interview Dr. David Diamond because he had hypertriglyceridemia. He has a lot of talks about that, and I'll leave it up to all of you to look into that yourself.
Try Alan Goldhammer from True North.
Okay.
He will blow your socks off. He knows more about fasting than anybody else in the world, and he heals that stuff that you're talking about: cholesterol, diabetes, high blood pressure, and so on. He heals it, and he's got a study on that was written up in a peer-reviewed medical journal I told you the 177 continuous patients, and every one of them he healed. Took them off their drugs, and 3 years later, they were still off their drugs.
And how did you do your research? Did you use the free site PubMed, or what was your resource for studying?
The internet.
Okay.
But use PubMed or everything?
No, everything.
He
Okay.
went from one to the
Everything.
next.
Absolutely everything.
But he did read medical journals as well in PubMed.
Let them communicate with me. Absolutely. Yeah, you have my email address. Give them my email address.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you both so much.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Thank you for doing this and sharing your heart and soul and your journey.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank you
very
both.
much.
Bye, everyone. I hope you'll share this and look below for the other interviews I talked about. My show is Growth Factor, and you can email me growthfactor.org@gmail.com, and email me if you have an incredible spiritual story or health journey.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.